We're here chatting with Mike Perry, better known as MC Flipside, in Toronto. How are those winter blues treating you so far this year?
Hello, Barry. It's good to be here. I would have to say the winter blues right now are definitely on high. I haven't really been feeling the cold, brisk, freezing ice blasts that pretty much freeze my cheeks upon every step. It's pretty crazy because it's not snowing very much, so that's a plus. Although I'm sure people that snowboard and love winter activities are annoyed because we haven't had consistent snowfalls, and machine-made powder, man-made powder isn't the same as nature's tear, you know? Because I call snow nature's tear because I personally despise it. I'm a Mediterranean-blooded lover of the sun. Even though I'm fair-skinned and have to be careful not to get burnt, there's something about salt water and hot water touching your toes. And not everyone thinks this way. I know a lot of people that are serious snowboarders and are winter bunnies. So...
Well, that's what we get for living in Canada, right? I guess we got to get used to it and find a way to get some nice villa down south. I think the snowbirds have it made and they've got the right ideas, but I think both of us are a little ways away from retiring quite yet to somewhere warm. We've known each other for quite a long time. Actually, it would have been the spring of 2006. I moved to Toronto working at a recording studio called Row Beater, and that's where I met you when you were starting the Mike Perry alias.
Yep.
So we go back a long way, and let's go even further back here. My first question for you is, what song actually got you into dance music? Can you think of something that was the first one that really hit, and you're like, okay, you know what, that was my first favorite song in dance, electronic, whatever it was?
Well, the first thing I want to mention is that was an excellent question. And also a great intro about our history. First thing I want to mention is that the aliases, before I get into my history and stuff with you, and also the question you just asked, Mike Perry is for my urban hip hop, my R&B, acid jazz. I really love Jamiroquai. So on that album, I touched upon the different abilities with my voice. Also, then, Domenico Revito is the name that I use for techno and tech house, which I started a few years ago. And the reason why some people have sometimes, said to me, you have so many aliases, it's actually pretty common now. And the reason why is what I do as Flipside is totally different from Mike Perry. It is yes, I rap as Flipside, but they're different styles. Now, we met in the summer of 2006, and that was a great time when I started the Mike Perry project. So it was a culmination of all the influences that led me to the Mike Perry project. So that'll get me to explain my answer for the last question you asked, which is what was the first song that I heard? And it'll tie into Mike Perry. You'll see why. The very first electronic music song that I heard growing up that caught my ear was actually a Chicago house record called Work It to the Bone. Now, my cousin, Rosario, was a DJ in North York. He actually attended the same high school, coincidentally, that Dave Balance, a promoter from Toronto, graduated from. A few years later, mind you, my cousin's quite a bit older than all of us, but he was playing freestyle, not the freestyle that was ruined by Gino beats, or Guido beats as they like to call them in America, but when Todd Terry and Louis Vega were making freestyle, when it was breakdance music. So my cousin Rosario played me Work It to the Bone. It had a guy kind of singing on it, also kind of rapping on it. Come on, let's work to the bone, bone, bone. You got to work it to the bone. Work it to the bone, bone, bone. Just work to the bone, bone, bone. You keep sweating to the bone. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? Working, sweating. And then behind him, it almost sounded like an old school rap beat, but then with the 808 kick drum just exploding with decay. Boom, 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 boom. Doo, 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 doo. And I was just hooked. And I was a kid, and it just, I'm covered in goosebumps right now, by the way. That's how I can remember the production on that record in that horrible environment. Not saying that my aunt's house is horrible, but I mean, you're in a basement, your grandmother's cooking food, you can't hear anything, but the music popped out like a virtual reality 3D video game that you're the main character in, first person shooter perspective. That's how impactful that record was.
Awesome. I know I have a couple of those that are in my head. My strange one was it was the theme song that they used to have all the NBA players come out to in like the early 90s, which was Too Unlimited. Get ready for this. That's what got me into it, right?
I have to say, the first time I heard that song, anybody can front and like say, oh, it's such a cheesy song. First time I heard it, number one, was at a rave. Okay? And Too Unlimited was a group of Dutch techno. I don't think they ever expected that song to become what it did. I think they made that song to just basically create euphoria and excitement on the dance floor, because the original version, it was almost, you would hear it in the middle of, like, I remember Dr. Trance playing it in the middle of a progressive set and the place would explode.
So let's go a little deeper and let's add some time frame to this, because you've got history in some electro hip hop under the Mike Perry alias. You've got MC Flipside back in the Jungle days. You've got the Energy 108 days. Yeah, exactly. So why don't you take us through a little bit time-wise of where things started, and then who you're connected with, and as close as we can up to today, within, without this taking an hour long, because I know you could talk about this for an hour or so.
I'll break it down with, first, I'll start off with MC Flipside, the rave MC, then the jungle portion, then the Energy 108 portion into the club portion, because it all ties in. So I have a degree in broadcasting and film, and I went to Centennial College, which is the degree equivalency program, similar to the program at Ryerson. And I made a group of friends, Tony Walsh, John Vella, Lennox Scoberg, who now resides in Scotland, and he's in the deep house scene there. Good friend of mine, one of my very best friends. So we were a tight-knit, bandit, riff-raff crew. The teachers, we were like the guys that were disruptive but also got A's in class, because we helped each other out with studying, but we also wanted to talk about electronic music and trip-hop and raves. And I remember I would always be emceeing in their ears. And as a part of my program, I did a college placement and co-op. So before I started my actual program and I got to know these guys really well, I had to spend some time at Chin Radio. And it was at Chin Radio that I met a gentleman by the name of Dominic Raffaele. Dominic was a DJ named Candyman who used to be one of the owners of Happy Face Productions. Dominic asked me, after he heard me do my typical emceeing in his ear, which I still do to this day, Barry can tell you, when I'll start freestyling in his ear and like top making songs up on the spot. But Dom heard me, mumbling under my mouth, and I noticed in his he had a shelving in his radio studio, and on that shelving I saw a tape with DJ Fabio and MCGQ. So I asked him, "Are you into that kind of stuff?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I go by a name of MC Flipside." You gotta understand, I was a kid. And he's like, "Oh, really? Let me hear you MC." So I'm like, all right. You're listening to the sound of the MC. Flipside live and direct with the DJ Candyman inside. And he was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool." And I was like 160 pounds, skinny as a rake, flowing big ass curly hair, shaved on the sides, skin tight pants with like a leather jacket on. Like I used to dress like very Saturday Night Fever. And out comes like these freestyles, and I started rapping in Jamaican. And he's just like confused by the oxymoron that he's witnessing. Because, it was like I'm rapping like Jamaican, but I'm wearing like skin tight pants. So he's kind of like looking at me like, who is this confused Snow / David Bowie character, right? So I show up to a party with him at the Opera House, which was a delirium party, Marcus Visionary, and I just slay the place. So I get confidence because now a couple DJs that are there, they want to book me. Fast forward to a Destiny Friday, and I'm working part-time at Canada's Wonderland, and I meet Matt C's cousin, David Castleman. So the same kind of thing happens. He hears me MC at the games, working in the games in Alpenfest by the Vortex roller coaster, if you're familiar with the Toronto landmark. And I show up at Destiny Friday, and I'm there with Ryan Kruger, who was someone that knew me through the rave scene. Great guy. And Matt C was there, so I approach him the way I always do. I'm a hustler. I like to communicate. So I speak to him, and Matt C's like, oh, I heard about you through my cousin David. You're the Italian guy that raps and actually sounds legit. So I'm like, hey, do you mind if I jump on the mic? And so Matt C looks at me, and you got to understand, Matt C was a huge DJ at the time. And he said, yeah, my cousin said you're really good. I'll give you 10 minutes. I'll never forget this. This was in, man, I can't believe I'm about to tell you the year, 1995. So I'm like standing, I'm like, wow, I was still in my teens to age myself, okay? And I get up there, and he drops Josh Wink, I Am Ready. I remember this like it was yesterday. So in the break, it drops into a hip-hop beat. And then it builds for like a long time with like this 909 snare build. And it goes on and on and on like a crazy crescendo. So when it drops into the same loop that was used in Cypress Hill, Insane in the Membrane, so you kind of understand the kind of drums that I was rapping on. So, it drops into that, and I start freestyling. Now everybody in the place to be, you're checking out Flipside and DJ Matt C. Come on, throw 'em up in the sky. Come on, wave 'em from side to side. Like something like that, simple, but where it fit on the beat. And then I kept doing it until the snare build hit. Then I stayed quiet, let the build, and as it built towards the end, the usual, okay, how you feeling it? And then as it's building, and then I shut up, and then the climax hit. Here we go, boom! Now you gotta understand, Matt C was blown away. It's not like I did something complicated, but it was because of my timing, and I knew when to shut up, and I was a kid. So because of that, Matt brought me to another party, and he said, can you come and MC for me here, then here, then here. It was crazy, and it just snowballed. Then it ties back to Dominic, who got me on the Delirium party. He had a radio show opportunity at Energy 108. So I went on a show called Street Beat with legendary radio host Scott Turner, and he heard me. And again, same kind of attitude. Heard me freestyle. I didn't talk over every song. Now, yes, there are some people out there that probably, even though I didn't speak as much as other MCs, there are people that hate MCs. And the reality is some of them are horrible. But I always took my pride, being a DJ as well, to not speak over every fucking song part of my language. I hate when people do that. I try not to do that. So Scott Turner heard me, and he wanted us to go on the show again and again and again and again, which led to a radio opportunity when the late Don Burns, rest in peace, went to Z103. Once again, my MC skills led to these major opportunities, and that was back in the day, which led me to Flipside on the radio, Flipside at the raves, and then finally to tie me into drum and bass through Delirium, yes, but it was when I teamed up with Freaky Flow through parties that I threw myself with the late Evil P, called Reality Productions, which then went on to become Good Vibes, where Freaky Flow was in a DJ contest, and I rap about this on our Keep It Live album from 2002, where I talk about how I threw a rave, he was in the DJ contest, we had chemistry, and one thing led to another where it just felt right. And I saw the potential with Freaky Flow's skills, with his scratching and his turntablism, not only that, but his selection. And we had a chemistry. We're still friends to this day. We've had our ups and downs. However, in the end, we always have respect for each other because we're both very opinionated guys. We're both very driven. And we were from when we first met, and we were very young. We were teenagers when we met. And to be able to see the vision and the business model from that party, that led to me succeeding with him in the drum and bass world and hip hop as well. And then it just kind of offshoot from there. But Delirium and doing Energy 108 and teaming up with Liquid Adrenaline back in the day really opened up a lot of doors. And the Liquid Adrenaline team up fast forwards to this day, and I'll tie into that after I hear what you have to say with the answers I just gave you.
So that takes you up maybe 15 years ago, right?
It's not easy talking about my
10
history.
years ago, you're not even there.
But that was pretty accurate, though. That's really how a lot of it happened. You can edit out the best parts, but, that's really clear. And then I met George Hatiris, but that's not how I started getting booked, though. But I met George through his Smart Bar, which I can talk about, and then there was like Beatport, and there's different chapters, right? It's hard to answer it all in one answer.
Yeah, so why don't we move forward with that? So Hatiris, a huge portion of the work that you did, you worked yourself again. You mentioned the alias is under Mike Perry.
Correct.
And then your work alongside other people out of Toronto
Yes.
and around the world, Deadmau5 and so on, and then where you're moving on today. So here's part 2. How's that?
Excellent. So back in that time when I was succeeding with my emceeing, people sometimes tend to, at the time they forgot like that I was also always DJing. Although I became super known for my voice, I was always DJing, and I've been actually playing records pardon me, since I was 16 years old. So vinyl has always been a crucial part of my life. I am an avid collector. I have probably over 15,000 vinyls and vinyl pieces rather, and I've got collectibles from every genre, from deep house to Detroit house, Chicago house, techno, etc. Now, back in my days of raving and DJing, I had befriended a few people that are still instrumental in my life. George Hatiris, who I then formed Melvin and Klein with, Paranoid Jack, who I used to own the Redline Studios with in Scarborough up until 2002, who then went on to become one of the most respected producers on Stickman Records. The Stickmen were also big influences on me. They were pioneers in the world of tech house from Toronto. They did incredible things for the Canadian electronic scene with John Aquaviva and Richie Houghton. And they're not active. Paul Stickman is active. He just released something on an EP on Dubfire's label last year. But the Stickmen as a label are no longer around, although you can find their back catalog on Beatport and Tracksource, etc. But they were instrumental in helping me develop as a producer and a DJ. So George Hatiris and I met way back when he was running the Liquid Adrenaline Smart Bar. Now in '96, he put out this album called Liquid Adrenaline, and I remember I handed the CD to a producer by the name of Bad Boy Bill from Chicago. And on this album was a song called The Anthem. Bad Boy Bill heard this CD, which, by the way, The Anthem was listed by Carlo Leo as one of his all-time favorite and most influential records. Just to make you guys understand my ear. Not to be an asshole, but I signed Paranoid Jack, and Dubfire ended up putting three records by Paranoid Jack in his top 10 songs of 2001. And one of those records were Slave Driver. And I was the guy who heard the tape and told the Stickmen, you must sign this guy. When I heard Hatiris, I knew that IHR was the right label for him because of the Chicago house sound that George had when he started. I told Bad Boy Bill, this guy right here is going to be a big artist for your label. Upon Bad Boy Bill hearing the CD, no word of a fucking lie. That's how honest I'm being. Within 48 hours, my phone rang at home, because that's when what did I have, a Motorola flip phone? So he called me on my landline, and he told me I need to get in touch with George Hatiris. I need to sign this guy. Now, that went on to Spaced Invader, and then we know that it became a multi-platinum Juno-winning song, one of the greatest songs of the 2000s in house music, period. That's how I tie in with him. That's how I tie in with Paranoid Jack. Then we move on to my relationship with the Stickmen, which led me to starting a record label called Placebo with Freaky Flow, which was my drum and bass label that lasted till about 2000. And fast forward to 2006, where again, Bad Boy Bill, the point I'm trying to make, how this all ties in, it's very important for our younger listeners to hear how important relationships are and how you need to not burn bridges. Fast forward to 2006, 2007, after we met, and you helped me with Mike Perry, Bad Boy Bill helped me by endorsing me with Beatport to start Proper Beats and Rhymes, which became my digital label because of my rapport with Bad Boy Bill, because of my track record with bringing him Hatiras. Now, Hatiras did all the work. He produced all his music. But I, out of the goodness of my own heart, told Bill that this is a guy that you should be signing. And he repaid me the favor 7 years later, with helping launch PBR. And so did John Acquaviva, who I met working at Stickman. Do you see how important it is to tie your relationships together and never to be a douchebag? Because when you need favors, even though John Acquaviva has never booked me for a party, I have never done a release on Definitive. However, John got me to work with Simon Doty because he suggested to Simon Doty that he should work with me in 2011, which led to us doing All Out in 2013, which became one of the top sellers on Tool Room Ibiza 2014. So do you see how important it is, again, to not burn bridges? Because people do you favors, even people that you might not work with all the time, like a John Acquaviva, who's a completely different fucking sound from me. But look at how we still respect each other, because when you're good at your craft, the real masters of their domains stick together. Because John knows if he sends me a record with a rap on it, and if I think it's whack, he's going to take it seriously from me. Not saying that I'm the authority, but I think I know what I'm talking about after 20 fucking years. You know what I'm saying? I have true intentions and good intentions, and I guess the universe pays me back through guys like Bill endorsing my label. And that's why, fast forwarding to 2006, it led to PBR. Then it led to me working with George doing Just the Tip, which became a huge record. And then us doing Autograph, Get Blasted, Open Up Your Eyes. Fast forward to 2014, Melvin and Klein, which then leads to Keep On Jackin', which then leads to Annie Mac and Mark Knight signing us, and Chustin Ceballos loving it, and then other, etc., etc., etc. BBC plays, Juno nominations, all stemming back to the original time meeting him at the Smart Bar, to meeting Bad Boy Bill at a rave, to meeting so-and-so at a party, to meeting so-and-so on an airplane, flying to a gig, etc., etc. You cannot be a douche.
Well, I guess that leads into this whole Salami 5000 thing. So
did you like that answer?
You give it true, which I love, and that's awesome. So why don't you explain what this is to those that actually don't know what it is? Because I think almost anybody that actually knows you knows this. But what does that mean? Because you said it's all about the family, and it's all about the connections and being true and proper. So where does Salami 5000 fit into this?
Well, as you know, I'm not a snob when it comes to music. I've made EDM, I've made breaks. If you look at some of the people I've worked with Agent Orange. I've had Peter Bailey remix me. I've worked with Carlo Leo, but then I've also worked with guys like SPL. I've worked with Stanton Warriors, Crafty Cuts, Paranoid Jack, Hatiras, as well as other techno guys. Simon Doty, Funk Agenda, the Laid Back Luke, Fetty Legrand, but then even guys like DJ Dan, the whole spectrum, the whole gamut. But Salami 5000, where it comes from, is I have no issue with records that go commercial, with more mainstream music. I love Wolfgang Gartner. That track that he did with John Oates was so good, and that's recent. He sent it to me, and I loved it. I think people get confused. They think that maybe I'm anti-EDM, even though I've made more mainstream tracks. And first of all, EDM means electronic dance music. What I have a problem with is how the mainstream media took, an acronym and hijacked it to signify labeling more commercial records. That they should have just called that pop dance and not take EDM. EDM was just a term that even represented, dubstep, deep house. EDM, like, that's that world, right? It's like rock and roll, and then you have your subgenres: progressive rock, classic rock. But instead, it's like rock and roll saying, oh, progressive, and then everything is progressive. Like, no, that's not cool. Like, that's why I'm against it. They took it to make it, glamorized. They glamorized it, sensationalized it to represent, that small percent. Like, let's be real. Not everyone's selling records like Zed. It's a disservice. Not saying that like about Zed. Zed is extremely talented and he's a great guy. I've hung out with him backstage. He's hilarious. We've had many laughs like in other cities. He's great and he's been super sweet to me. However, I don't like how the majors tried to make it be like super Hollywood, super cheese about, the private jets on Instagram and look at these big studio monitors. And a lot of these guys, come on, man, I talk to them. They got to work hard. They're stressed out. I'm not going to name names, but I'm homies with a lot of these people. And they get pushed and pimped and worked to the bone for money. And I get it because they have these doors opened, which is the other side of the music business. I understand both because I've worked for majors and indie labels. But Salami 5000 is, you notice how on these EDM festivals, everything's got to be glamorized, like 10 million megawatts and like, the greatest LP ever. And everything has to seem like it's larger than life. The colors, the way the marketing is done, like super cheesy. It's not stripped down and minimalist, which I think you can be super successful without being so damn, predictable, right? And that's where Salami 5000 comes from. Because for you to just say salami, people will be like, what's he talking about? But when you add the 5000, it's hilarious because it makes it sound so futuristic. So it's like Salami 5000, it's I don't know. I just think it's funny because it's grandiose and it's a joke. I have total respect for many of those talents that I named. I admire and wish, like, my production isn't on the level of some of these guys where I can even the field is my songwriting ability and the fact that I can freestyle like on the spot all day long. And I think a lot of those guys have to rely on external musicians and whatnot, and they're trying to do super complicated chord progressions, whereas I'm all about the groove, so I can make up ground, right? Like, you look at the Killers and all these indie bands that stick to like simple stuff, but it sounds full because they're a master at their domain. So I think EDM sometimes, people aren't stupid. They know a turd when they see it. And I think they need to stop over selling these artists. And then there's the few that are very deserving because their skill set is undeniable, whether it's a Zed. And I want to be clear on this. Skrillex, Axwell, Sebastian Ingrosso, Wolfgang Gartner, these, to name a few, these are undeniable talents. You and I both know I have tremendous respect for Ferry Corsten. I have a lot of his albums. Armin van Buuren, I've seen him DJ several times. Phenomenal. Do I play his music? No, but the guy's good, man. You got to tell it like it is. So Salami 5000 doesn't apply to them, but it applies to the people that you and I both know have been over-marketed to capitalize on the fact that dance music is now embraced finally by North American mainstream culture, not just people like us that are dedicated music nerds.
But the bubble, in my opinion, popped about a year ago. right? And now we're starting to see things like the resistance stages happening at Ultra, and darker, deeper sounds as being the main draw for some of these festivals. And you're not looking at big room, the same sound for 10 hours in a row when you go to Ultra or WMC or whatever they call it nowadays. So we're starting to see a shift. Do you see that shift away from it? And if you do, how are people who have been sort of forced and pushed into that commercial angle going to make their way out? Or are they sunk? Are they done? They put their chips in and they're out of it now?
See, that's a very, very, very good question. Very difficult to answer because there are so many, undecided, unknowns. When I say undecided, I mean, do the A&Rs even know what they're selling? Do the listeners right now, are they evolving with the changes? I think what happened is when EDM popped in terms of the mainstream, I'd say that it started really pushing its head and hitting North America, not Europe, North America. People started really looking at it and going, wow, I'm loving this. 2008, it started. And then you saw it really pop 2010 to 2013. Now, remember, people going to clubbing and experiencing their vibes for the first time. And I'll only use Canada as an example. The average age in the Midwestern provinces, I think it's the legal drinking age is 18. In Ontario, it's 19. I think in Quebec, it's 18. I think on the East Coast, it's 18. So you got to think, if you were 18 in 2008, that was 9 years ago. You're 27 now. So what I think happened is as they grew and matured and went from, Zed to another guy that I respect tremendously from that scene, Laid Back Luke. And again, it's not a criticism on their music, but I'm trying to think of how some of these people might think. Not all, but some, because some still stick to that sound. I think for some people, when I've talked to them, what they've said is they just got tired of the frenetic pace, the super buildy tracks. And what happened is they started, some of them have said to me they heard Chusin Ceballos or Mark Knight. People like that are kind of like still underground, but they remind me of when I was coming up, guys like Eric Murillo, which were like the entry level where you're hearing underground music, but played in such a sensible clubbing fashion because of their outstanding DJ skills. So you start to go, oh, that was a kind of a cool remix of like Praise You, for example, but it might be stripped down and you hear a more sexy, sophisticated version of it. So what I think what happens is as they're maturing with life, through their job, through their social settings, their friends perhaps, they start to evolve their tastes and they kind of move away from EDM. So what I think is happening is in North America, these hundreds of thousands of people that started embracing the culture, there is a loud enough minority that embraced more of the sounds of what you hear on Defected, what you would hear at like a BPM festival, what you would hear at like Burning Man, for example, or the techno stage of an EDC. I think that's what's happening. So you're hearing more and more, and then you're hearing the influence of deeper house on the radio, tropical house. So the BPMs are slowing down. You're hearing a resurgence of techno that has always played a predominant role, of course, a movement, and it hasn't died there. But you're noticing people's taste evolving from a lot of those EDM listeners. So there's a bit of a backlash from them. People like me have always paid attention. People like you have always appreciated both sides. But now a lot of the EDM or the Salami 5000 are realizing there's a materialism, there's a pretentiousness to this, and I'm looking for something deeper. So whether it's hot-natured or Disclosure exploding in the last 5 years, that helps. So because of that, and because of Duke Dumont and some of these songs that have cracked the commercial mainstream, it's offered a different taste. And that's why what you asked me is happening. And you're seeing more and more of it because tastes have matured. Do I think EDM is totally dead? No. But I think festivals are going to have to be more of a 50-50. You're going to notice that people are going to demand house and disco house and happy house and more uplifting trance with slower BPMs more and more. That's why you're noticing Anjuna beats kicking ass, because people are going to want to hear progressive. They're going to want to hear techie stuff with more of a crossover edge, but still rooted from the underground. I really do. That's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. That's why what you asked me is happening.
Now, you've always been someone who has progressed in your musical taste. As you can tell, you go through all sorts of different genres and moods and vibes, and I think that's a good thing. Is there a plan of action while you're doing it? Or is it really, this is what I'm feeling, and the people that know me and like me, I'm going to take them on this journey, and if they don't like it and they want, old school electro or the jungle side of things, well, listen to that from a few years ago or from 10, 15 years ago, and that's that me. So do you plan as you move along, or is it just sort of a journey that you try to take people with?
Well, that's a great question. I sometimes do play some of my classic, I've been, it's funny, I was recently asked by a very good drum and bass promoter, like, we would love to hear you again. And he said, I'll even let you pick the DJ. Now, I could probably DJ for myself, drum and bass, and mix it properly, but it would be fun to be able to unleash as a vocalist on drum and bass once again, just to bring back the roots. But I'm always rapping in the studio, I'm always singing, I'm always writing songs. But when I'm DJing, at the time, in my heart of hearts, where I always gravitate towards is soulful house, techno, Detroit techno, melodic techno, progressive. When I say progressive, I'm talking about Sasha Digweed progressive. I love when it's hypnotic and it has a subtle energy. I'm really feeling stuff that you would hear Ramon Tapia play. So as a DJ, that's what I like to represent. Is I'm really into Motown and I'm really into hip hop and the production of hip hop. People like Jay Dilla. So as a DJ, I need to feel soul. Even when I played electro, although there might be some people that say no, it wasn't the soulful side of you. I disagree. If you listen to a lot of the electro that I played, and if you strip down the more abrasive sounds and the square bass in the productions, and you listen to the drums, Wolfgang Gardner, man, he's got a lot of soul in his drums. It's a lot of so when I'm talking about swing, I'm talking about the rhythm. If you're not listening to the hi-hats have that space where there's that delay, almost like it's skipping, then that to me is too rigid. Now, I'm not hating, but electro that was very that's not, I did not like that shit. And I'm not going to name producers because I don't want to get into a beef war. This ain't hip hop. But as a DJ, I will always have that element of soul. And people who are true fans of mine have embraced it, whether I've played electro, whether I've played dubstep, whether I've played house. And if you do listen to my mixes, the one predominant factor is there was always that edge of house and techno. Now, you know that, having worked with me at Robeater, that it's always been present, even when I made electro. And if you listen to High Friend, if you listen to the drums, it's a straight-up tech house track. So that's always been there. And I think the reason why my true fans stick with me, although some maybe were like, fuck it, he's not playing, just the tip anymore. He thinks he's on Truth and Ceballos' label or whatever. That's cool, but the true Flipside fans have always accepted me being musical, which includes all those styles. And I think the true supporters, and I thank them with all my heart, are okay with that because they know that there's the hip-hop side of me, the rapper, the singer, the DJ, the techno snob, because there is a bit of that in me. And that's okay because I'm a music nerd. And when I make music, I go with what's in my heart. And if it means that I feel like rapping over a really dope Kanye West instrumental just to let it out, so be it. And if I want to play a deep, deep, deep set of deep house, super deep, like I'm talking Afro deep, like Black Coffee, then let me have my fucking moment. However, if I'm DJing, I'm at a party with you, like in Ottawa, and I can feel the room needs some uplifting progressive, then I'm going to play it. That's your job. You're supposed to entertain people without compromising your integrity.